For the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Should have received the minutes from our last meeting. I need a
I'll make the
motion. Steve. Motion by
2 meetings.
2 weeks ago.
Last two meetings.
2 meetings ago.
Got it
Sorry.
up there on the screen for you.
I apologize. All in favor, do we need to take a
Just a motion in a second.
motion is second? Motion by Mr. Isgrove, second by Mrs. Baker
Sounds like a winner.
and Mr. Hancock.
Oh, I buried it. Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Isgrove.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sprague,
Yes.
Mr. Weigel.
Yes.
Mr. Holbrook.
Yes, tonight I want my superintendent's comments to focus in on what we are doing with the COVID vaccination and the collaborative efforts that the district has been fortunate enough to have with the city of Hamilton. First of all, we're very fortunate with the relationship with the City of Hamilton Health Commissioner Kay Farrar, Executive Director of Public Safety Scott Skermese, along with our Fire Chief Mark Mercer and our EMS Coordinator Mark Minery in helping us organize this massive undertaking. Tomorrow, all students will be all instruction will be conducted remotely so that our staff of almost 900 individuals will be given the vaccination tomorrow. And I think that that's really, really important to emphasize the collaborative efforts in Hamilton coming together. This is just another step in us being able to continue to build towards making certain that we have in-person learning available for all students. And this is just another safety measure. We will continue with our safety protocols, masks, social distancing, sanitation. All of those things will continue as we go through this process. Our plan is for the second portion of this vaccination to occur on March 12th, excuse me. That is a teacher records day and students aren't in school. So once again, we've planned this out so that students will miss a minimum amount of instruction and yet staff will be given the opportunity to receive the 2 vaccinations. And so I couldn't be happier and more proud to be a small part in this. But the biggest group that I would like to compliment on top of that are our school nurses. From August 1st till now, they have worked tirelessly in our schools to service our students, our parents, and our communities. Quarantines, positive tests, trying to keep our staff in a place where we can have school every day has all been a part of their daily routine that has changed tremendously from prior years. And we are very, very fortunate, and I'm very fortunate to have a board that supports having a school nurse in every building, because especially this year, that is an absolute necessity. And Hamilton, once again, is in a position where we are servicing students, and having those school nurses there is just another example of that. Those are my comments for this evening, Mr. Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Holbrook. And I had to echo that. I'm glad we had the nursing staff to handle all those students. And I appreciate all your hard work with the city and the health department too on getting all that together for our teachers.
Well, it's certainly a team effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Hancock, are you taking care of the Ohio Coalition?
Mr. President, tonight we have a resolution for your consideration to join the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding. And it reads as follows. Whereas the deduction of funds from the Hamilton City School District by the Ohio Department of Education and payment of those funds to private schools in the form of educational choice vouchers diminishes the amount of funding and the levels of educational opportunity for the education of the pupils in the district. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the Hamilton City School District further reduces the funding available to support the additional needs of district minority pupils, pupils in poverty, and pupils with disabilities. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the Hamilton City School District results in the involuntary transfer of district local tax revenue approved by the voters of the district for the support of the district's operating expenses to private religious schools for the support of those schools' programs in violation of the rights of the district taxpayers. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the Hamilton City School District increases reliance on local revenue to maintain school operations in violation of the Ohio Constitution and clear directives of the Ohio Supreme Court. Now, therefore, the Board of Education finds and determines that deduction of school voucher funds from the Hamilton City School District is harmful to the district, its pupils, taxpayers, voters, and staff. The Board of Education authorizes and directs the school district's joinder of the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding, and directs the district treasurer to pay the coalition dues as set forth in Section 3. Coalition dues for the 2021 school year are the sum of $2 per district pupil enrollment listed on the most recent report card, except that for ESC Boards of Education, the dues shall be the sum of 15 cents per ADM as of the last report card, or $3,000, whichever is less. Dues shall be allocated by the coalition as follows. 50 cents per pupil shall initially be allocated to the payment of coalition operating expenses, and $1.50 per pupil shall be allocated to the support of the coalition efforts in opposition to the deduction of school voucher funds from this and other school districts. Coalition dues are payable upon passage of this resolution.
Make a motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Isgro to accept this resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Pastor Matthews. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mr. Weigel.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Yes, tonight we have a resolution with the OHSAA membership. This is something we do yearly where districts have to opt into membership with the Ohio High School Athletic Association. And it reads, be it resolved, the Hamilton City School District Board of Education has authorized membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association for schools under its jurisdiction. Schools eligible for membership are those that include one or more grades at the 7 through 12 level. It is agreed these schools will conduct their athletics in accordance with the Constitution, bylaws, regulations, interpretations, and decisions of the Ohio High School Athletic Association. This resolution shall remain in effect for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to support this resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Baker,
Second.
second by Mr. Weigel. Discussion? Mr. Hancock.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mr. Weigel.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Holbrook.
Yes, next on the agenda for your consideration tonight, we have a final reading for the district calendars for next year. Some of the highlights of those calendars, and one of the positive things that has come out of the pandemic is the fact that we are going to start the week of August 16th next year. And for those first four days, we are going to start the week in a hybrid model. And what that does is it brings half of our students back for 2 days, and the second half of our students for those next 2 days, and then on that Friday, all students would come. And what we have found is that first week, there's a lot of getting to know students and a lot of things that happen, and doing that in that fashion was really beneficial this year, and so we're carrying that over just for the first week of school. Some other highlights is that there will be an entire week over Thanksgiving that students and families will have off, and there will be a 2-week winter break that is included in the calendar, along with a week in April for spring break. So it's a little different than the traditional calendar in the hybrid start, as well as the week off for Thanksgiving. But the feedback that we've gotten from not only staff but parents is the fact that that time is valuable time, especially the Thanksgiving and winter recess with family and travel and things of that nature. Giving those just few extra days was really, really positively accepted this year. So the first reading on this was in January, so this is a final read this evening, and both our preschool and our K-12 calendars are up for vote for this evening.
Okay. I need a motion to support this calendar, to accept this calendar.
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Matthews?
Second.
Mrs. Baker seconds the motion. Any discussion? Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
We are asked to consider the Board of Education policies. This is the final reading. Those are in your, in the board docs that was shared with you. Do I have a motion to accept those, the board policies?
So moved.
Mr. Weigel moves. Second?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Isgro seconds. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
The next item is a fairly unique item that doesn't appear on most agendas, is that we have a technical reading of a board policy. And what a technical reading is that if we have individuals that have changed positions, sometimes those individuals are identified as the key contact person for specific board policies. When those people leave the district or move to different positions, you can do what's called a technical read, where it does not change the board policy, but it will change who that contact person is for that board policy. And so tonight we have a technical read on board policy 3362. In the past, that was the contact person on that was Dr. Conkle. You know, Dr. Conkle was very fortunate, is now the superintendent in Ross City Schools. And so we are going to change the contact person to our associate superintendent, Mr. Wright, in that board policy. So that is what is in front of you for consideration this evening.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Mr. Weigel?
Second.
Second by Pastor Matthews. Mr. Hancock?
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mr.
The next item that we have on the agenda is a contract through the Butler County Educational Service Center. And what this contract is for someone to come in at the end of May and beginning of June to train our teachers on the new evaluation, or train our administrators, excuse me, on the new evaluation system for teachers. We're fortunate in the fact that all of our administrators will be present for this, instead of having this going out at various times through the year for our administrators to be trained. They'll all be trained together, and that we have contracted that out through trained professionals at the Educational Service Center. That contract is for consideration tonight as well.
So I need a motion to approve this contract. Mrs. Baker? And a second by Mr. Isgro. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Board members, we have in front of you the consent agenda for this evening. Take a second to look at that, and I will need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Baker approves the consent agenda. Second?
Second.
Mr. Weigel seconds it. Mr. Hancock?
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Board members, we've been asked to approve the contracts for the superintendent, for the treasurer. If you don't mind, let me have a little latitude for a second. This contract is in effect from August 2022 through July 2026, which seems like a long way away, but it's probably not. It's probably going to go pretty quickly. But I think on behalf of the staff, on behalf of the board, we just appreciate what you two gentlemen have been doing. For Bob, I was thinking since 1997, the state has been in violation of how they fund schools. It's unconstitutional. And that means every couple of years, things get a little hairy on how exactly we're going to get money. And you've been taking us through those deep waters and those crazy waters for many years, and have really enabled us to operate as a district without going back to the voters every few years for levies. And I think the people of Hamilton should be proud of that, or maybe proud's not the right word, but should be appreciative of that fact. And we just appreciate the time that you put in to help us understand the complexities of all this and help us make decisions. And Mr. Holbrook, I want to thank you for all your leadership, and that having two gentlemen like you at the forefront of our district provides us with some stability. I think we've talked before about how there's such a big turnover of superintendents in our state, and this gives us some stability with you at the helm and providing leadership. You've especially shown that as we've gone in through all this COVID times, leadership is not easy, because no matter what you do, you're going to be wrong someplace. So, but this has shown us your leadership, your willingness to take the, if I can say, bull by the horns and say, okay, let's do what's best for our kids. And in this case, that's what's happened. We were the first district to return after Christmas break with no problems, and it's kept our kids safe, it kept our kids in school, it kept our kids learning, and we can't ask much more than that. And we look forward to working with both of you gentlemen into the next few years, and I'm just glad that you guys are both on board with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to serve. Thank you.
So first of all, we'll vote on Mr. Holbrook's contract. May I have a motion to accept that contract?
I'll make the motion, sir.
I'll second.
Mr. Isgrove makes the motion. Pastor Matthews seconds that. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
At this time, we will vote to approve the treasurer, Mr.
I'll make that motion as well, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Isgrove?
I'll second.
Mr. Weigel seconds it. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
And once again, thank you. It's been an honor to serve this district for over 26 years. I thought I'd be here for 4. I think a lot of us think
I
that.
thought so too.
Treasure, yeah, that was kind of the lifespan of a treasure back in the day, and in a particular district, and it's been a great ride. Done a lot of great things in this district, and looked forward to a lot more great things to happen.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank, this board has gone through a very challenging time with COVID and some other things that we've gone through, and you have united, you have been supportive, you have had a vision on what is best for kids and made that the litmus on making decisions. And I think that you could not ask for more as a leader than just having a vision on making decisions that are best for kids. And all 5 of you always have that as your number one goal, is that what is best for our students in our district. And it's not only refreshing, it's part of the reasons why this district is moving forward positively in a lot of different areas. It's not my leadership, it's your leadership, and I want to thank all 5 of you for that.
Well, Mike, if I can say, a lot of people may not know that this is your first job as a superintendent. You've been through the Cincinnati schools for many years and ended up here with us. And this is your first job as a superintendent, and people probably don't realize it because you handle it so well. And it's not been just the COVID, there's been other things that have played along that you have just come up to the task and handled it and on to the next one. And we're very appreciative of how professional you have been taking care of all this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Isgro. I appreciate that. That's kind words.
Okay, if we can continue on. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. President, you have before you tonight the financial reports for your consideration. Let's see what else we got on that agenda. Okay. Evidently, it didn't want to cooperate. Well, that's strange. We have several items for your consideration. Among those, the financial reports for the month of January and also December. We'll talk about January. And since these are cumulative. Estimated revenue at 56.57 million. We're at 56.389 million, 188,000 lower than anticipated. We stood at 58.26 million last year, so the numbers are running very close to what we've seen in the past. Nothing strange there, and we're running, like I said, very close to what we would anticipate at this time on the revenue side. The expenditure side, well, we're running even closer there. Out of a estimate of 59.276 million, we've spent $42,697 more than anticipated overall line items. Not seeing anything in there causes me any particular concern at this time. Going to have an interesting couple months. We're processing the retro pay for the staff. We had retro pay for probably 1,000 employees that hit the first pay in February, and so that will cause some numbers to change for us. We've anticipated that in the November forecast. We'll watch and see how that timing goes. We got a lot of stuff going on in terms of grants, particularly these COVID-19 grants, where we're going to see dollars start to shift out of the general fund and spent directly into those funds over the next month or so as we take credit for the things we've done during this time. So again, these are unique times where we don't see this type of shift necessarily in dollars, and we will keep you apprised of how that's going. We've made estimates in the November forecast as to how we think it will go. I think we'll end up perhaps a little better than that, which is where we always want to be. So if anybody has any questions on the financial reports, we would entertain those. I believe you'll also find on that particular agenda some donations and things of that nature for your approval.
I need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Baker, and second by? Pat?
Yeah.
Okay, Pastor Matthews. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Okay. That is our meeting for this evening. Our next meeting is a executive session only meeting on February 25th. I believe we return here for a full regular
there they
meeting
are.
on March 11th. So,
Before we adjourn, I just want to say for the record, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Mike, for all the hard work and dedication you've shown to this district.
that's fine.
I just want to get that on the record. Thanks.
I need a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion, sir.
Mr. Isgo, our meeting's adjourned.